to kiss the stream, and there to loll from morn till night, unheeding nibble, run, or bite, just for the joy of being there and drinking in the summer air. The summer sounds and summer sights that set a restless mind to rights, when grief and pain and raging doubt of men and creeds have worn it out. The bird's song and the water's drone, the humming bees' low monotone, the murmur of the passing breeze, and all the sounds akin to these that make a man in summertime feel only fit for rest and rhyme. Joy springs all radiant in my breast, though pauper poor than king more blessed. The tide beats in my soul so strong that happiness breaks forth in song and rings aloud the welkin blue with all the songs I ever knew. Oh, time of rapture, time of song, how swiftly guide thy days along, adown the current of the years, above the rocks of grief and tears. 'Tis wealth enough of joy for me in summertime to simply be.
Always up. Amy, can you please introduce the speaker?
It's my pleasure to welcome our speaker today, Omur. I'm going to say this wrong, Kayikci. And she is now at Duke in a postdoc program in biology. But the reason she's speaking with us today is that she is a native of one of the areas, the cities hardest hit by the earthquake that devastated parts of Turkey and Syria. And so please join me in welcoming Omur.
Why don't you bring your laptop? Okay.
Yeah.
Your laptop hold charge. You need the.
There. Yes, perfect. Hello, and thank you all for inviting me to tell you about, can you hear me? Okay. Hello, yes. Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me to tell you about what happened, the ongoing situation, and one of the hardest hit places in 2023 earthquake that affected Turkey and Syria. I put the number of days.
If you want to step away from the podium, take the mic.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that so much better. Yes, so you can see that too. I put the number of days. It's been exactly 139 days since the earthquake hit that particular region of Antakya. Here you're looking at the dawn of the earthquake when it hit, and everywhere it was smokes and dust and just epic catastrophe. Basically, they were just lost in their beds, in their homes, in their streets. No one knew where they were or where their loved ones were. And I'd like to apologize if I get emotional, because my family still live there. I'm gonna start with good things. I'm gonna show you the Antakya I left. And I don't usually take videos, but that day I did to share with my friend who lives in Buffalo. Actually, they were going through the winter storm up in Buffalo, December 2022. All right. This is Antakya on December 27th. It was a beautiful sunny day. It wasn't cold, it wasn't super hot. It was really nice. All the streets are decorated for the new year. As you can see, the companies are displaying of lights. It's all here. This street is Parai Located. It's also decorated. And then these are one of the I have another short. Okay. Hi, Mercy. View of the street in Antakya. It's a popular street. It's just an evening walk around town. Right before we work on Friday, buying spices and other Antakya stuff. You can see the decoration. That's the church. The rest of the street is covered to the right. As you can see, it's quite busy right now. This one we shared with you guys are really fine. Stay warm and have a stable. Okay, that was the Antakya I left just about 5 weeks before the earthquake hit. These videos were taken right before New Year Eve, but I assure you it was all the same on any other evening or night. Whether it was sunny, scorching hot, rainy, or snowy, which really happens, but this year it did snow. Okay, this street is does it move to the next slide? Oh. It's not moving. This is Antakya. I'm gonna do this way there. So I want to start with about the background of the region and what happened. What happened was expected. We knew it by the data, we knew it by the studies, we knew it by historical accounts. This wasn't the first earthquake that Antakya experienced. As a matter of fact, right before we came here on December 18th, we had a major earthquake. Major in the sense that it was a lot bigger in the magnitude we had experienced in the past, because we get a lot of earthquakes in Antakya. It's just a daily thing sometimes. In your sleep, work, exactly like California. But that one on December 18th felt different in terms of the way it shook the earth. It was more of an up-down movement rather than sideways, back and forth movement. And I asked my sister, she's a geophysicist, and she told me it could be a pre-shock, an earthquake that might be telling us something might happen, because her thesis was about microtremors in the region. And mentioned that kind of up and down movement was the kind that results in most damage and destruction. So the region is at the nexus of 3 major fault lines, where the Arabian plate and African plate pushes the Eurasian plate to the north, squeezing the small block of Anatolia to further move west. That movement happens about 10 millimeter per year. And in the past, when I say in the past, I mean catastrophic level destruction in the past in Antakya happened in such bigger periodicity that we only received that a big earthquake gonna happen, but we never knew about the details or the magnitude of the destruction, except it was big and the city was destroyed 7 times, so on and so forth. Now I say Antakya, but please take that as not only the city, but the region itself, because these borders that came with the countries after the world wars, they're just new. All the region, people, cultures have been there, and it's continuous. It just doesn't break with borders. So let's keep that in mind. The earthquake, the big one, hit in the morning on February 6th. Another major one followed 9 hours later. That absolutely destroyed everywhere. A major aftershock came on February 20th at 6.4. That was in my hometown. The epicenter was in my hometown. And as you can see here, the stars indicate the major earthquakes, but there were thousands and thousands of aftershocks that felt like major earthquake themselves. And to this day, people there still experience those tremors. Okay, so what happened after that tremor, big shock? This happened. This is the street I grew up on. It's the first street that was lighted. It's also known as Herodotus Street. This is the street that I showed you the video of. So it's still in that situation. Actually, they have just started removing the rubbles. This is an image from Aleppo. Yeah, I mean, Syria has been particularly affected due to the protracted conflict that didn't make the situation any easy for them. And now we have this. 80% of the city and the affected region has been destined to destruction, and it's all reduced to rubbles. I also have a small clip here that I downloaded. Oh, it may not play here. That's okay. So this is the road that was built recently that connects Antakya to Aleppo to Syria. It's just a straight road that crosses the plains in Antakya. It's a very fertile region. So it is crossing across fields, wheat fields, cotton fields, and all that. With the earthquake, all international rescue teams rushed to the region, and we're grateful for their help. And the first 72 hours were especially critical for rescue efforts. But the conditions were not all that favorable. First of all, the region experienced the harshest winter. It snowed. That happens every 5 years to 6 years. And it was freezing cold, freezing rain, and the rain didn't stop. I don't know, maybe that was a good thing, eliminated fire to expand and all, but the freezing cold and rainy conditions didn't help anyone. Political tensions. We're in the Middle East. There's always political tensions, whether it's at the local level or country level. So that has also affected the efforts, despite the knowledge that the first 72 hours are especially critical. That was particularly the case in Syria, where state of emergency wasn't declared immediately. So that delayed all the help and rescue efforts to reach to Syria. So in that region, I say Syria, but it's only 1 hour drive to my home, just 1 hour. And we have a lot of immigrants in our town as well, and in all that affected regions. Turkey was good at declaring the state of emergency immediately, hence receiving most of the rescue efforts and access to help. But there were some limitations that Turkey unfortunately didn't address. One of them being that the government didn't utilize the military power. So Turkish military is trained by NATO, and they tell their drones and all airplanes and all whatever they have to be by NATO standards, but they haven't mobilized that. So major help delayed to get to the ground, and no one knows why. Well, there are hypotheses about that. Another thing, AFAD, the Disaster Management Center, has failed miserably to coordinate efforts, to help efforts, both international and local efforts, to reach to the ground. That caused a lot of major delays and wasting a lot of that 72 hours that could have been helpful to people stuck under freezing cold under the rubbles. And of course, in Turkey, officials were more concerned about what people would think about them and their actions rather than getting the information there, cooperating with whomever is going there got there to help us. And the state banned Twitter for 1 day. So that was, I mean, Turkey is known for such actions that was utter stupidity. Okay, some numbers. So these numbers covers both Turkey and Syria, although the map here only highlights Turkish region. So the numbers are for both regions, and these are some estimated numbers because there are some people still missing, like literally their bodies are not found. So number of people affected are counted in millions, and it says here 9.1, but that could easily go up to 13 million, just the sheer amount of population that lived there. People killed, more than 50,000, more than 45,000 of these in Turkey and 80,000 in Syria. More than 107,000 people were injured, and these injuries are not some simple injuries. The injuries that carries to the future, that leaves some mark that affects their quality of life. So these are not just simple injuries. 3 million people relocated. Number of buildings totally destroyed is closer to 300,000 people, and we have about close to 1 million building that has been somewhat damaged, heavily damaged or moderately damaged, that's been waiting to be torn down and cleaned up from the affected area. So about these 3 million people, 2.6 of them live in temporary settlements. 1 million of these settlements are formal settlements, that is designated by the government or by the state that they could set up their tents or prefabricated houses or container places that's been placed there. But 1.6 million of them are informal sites, that is sidewalks, school gardens, playgrounds, some other state playgrounds, some just anywhere, basically. So after this catastrophe, I remember my sister waking up looking for my aunt who lived across from her, couldn't find her. It's just like 200 yards away from where they live. They couldn't find each other. My aunt left the house barefoot and forgot to take her phone. And I was very sick because I couldn't have access to her. But after the earthquake, and still is, I mean, we have the acute phase and the post-acute phase of the earthquake, but people are still living in tents, and access to tents were not easy either. So these people got these tents through their efforts. People didn't, or officials didn't get around and handed them tents. They had to go and ask for tents. That was one other thing, because AFA, that's Disease Management Center, insisted that all efforts go through them instead of coordinating between health organizations. So that also slowed down the health efforts. So now people live in tents, makeshift settlements, barracks, or greenhouses, because the economy in that region based on agriculture or some, grow orchards and all that. So people found themselves in these places, like this house in Samanda, a whole family, like several families living in greenhouses. And remember, it was really cold, and we don't like cold there at all. So having a stove in that closed area is a danger in itself. So survivors definitely felt the survivor guilt. They didn't know how to feel, what to feel, because they survived. I have a lot of my friends who were ashamed to live, actually, because they left their loved ones behind, or neighbors or students. So they wouldn't say they were pulled from under the rebels. They just say, oh, we just got lucky. So those who made it alive, they are living, but they don't have lives anymore. They don't have their routines. They don't have the streets they used to walk on. They don't have their neighbors. They don't have their friends. They don't have nothing. So they don't have their homes, nothing. But they're alive, and they had access to food. They had access somewhat to water in the early times after the earthquake, but they lost their lives. Like I mentioned, the impact of the weather and the climate conditions were really poor during the earthquake in February and March. That followed with flash flooding in the area. And now it's scorching hot. And as you can imagine, as the temperatures increase, that increases the humidity there, and that causes insects and other sorts of agents of disease spreading agents in the area. So at this time, people are still living with just basic needs and limited services to clean water. Very limited services. And actually, my friend who will join us later on for your questions from the region was just posting on social media that the water situation is really worse, and it's really embarrassing. 4 months after the earthquake, people are still in need of clean water. Of course, these are the physical things, and the physical health and physical and mental well-being of people are in jeopardy. The adequate shelter, it's okay if you sleep outside in summertime. That's okay. But people are still thinking about the coming winter. Winter is around the corner. It's only a few months away. And although we have mild winters, it's still winter for us, for people who live there. And chief among those that people need access to is clean water. Clean water, and actually to keep water away from their shelters. So when it rains a lot, it's gonna flood the shelters, which happened in springtime. And of course, with with the earthquake, not only homes or settlements destroyed, but also jobs were gone. So offices were gone, ateliers were gone, workshops were gone, everything was gone. So people didn't have jobs to go to. And the situation is particularly dire in areas, in remote corners, in villages where road access have been blocked. People, like I said, they need to go to get the help. Help is not being delivered there. That major earthquake shook the earth, affected the water and water supplies, wastewater removal, everything with it. So water, sanitation, and hygiene is compromised severely. And as you can see, people are now living in tents. It's still there, not going anywhere, among the rubbles, among buildings that are tilted sideways in danger. We still don't know if those areas are safe to build a tent all together. And there were some help with water, but imagine that's only your allowance of water, clean water. We need clean water not to drink or make food with. We need clean water to bathe. We need clean water for toothbrushing, We just take water for granted sometimes, but we need it for everything, to wash our faces. And children and women are particularly affected from that situation. So this image is from April, but still the same. I wasn't able to put a lot of pictures. I mean, I have thousands, but I assure you, the view hasn't changed. Unfortunately, people still get in queues to get water, or go to the officials to get some access to water, so on and so forth. So yeah, we had all these, like 80% of the cities in rubbles, and how do you remove these things? It's not just construction debris that's we're removing. We're removing the whole city. Whole cities are being torn down because the house is not livable. Actually, in some places, people don't even go into their houses. They're just so scared. The trauma they lived still punctuates their sleeps. Kids, doctors, and many professionals are scared to go into their places to fetch their phones, like my aunt, to fetch their shoes or anything. Unfortunately, the efforts to clean the waste has been so little. I mean, they're doing it, but they're not doing it right, which causes a lot more damage. And that damage is just not physical. I mean, yes, the toxic dust is all in the air that carries all these nasty chemicals that comes with it. And these buildings weren't just recently built according to regulations. There are some buildings from 50s, 60s, 70s, where there were no regulations, what kind of steel you use, what kind of cement you use. And asbestos was one of those chemicals. And we're not counting mercury or lead. That's all up in the air, causing major health risk to people who live there. And we all know what that might mean. That means more occurrences of chronic diseases in the future. And with people who already have pulmonary conditions, their situation got worse. Children, elderly people with disabilities, they're all affected. And as you can see here in the upper picture, just numbers and numbers of huge trucks carrying the debris without, I mean, maybe there are, I haven't seen any, there are some waters that's being sprayed, but that's just not enough. The sheer volume of the destruction actually doesn't allow that either. So that's being done quickly because people, I don't want to say people, but the government wants to rebuild, and they have been so enthusiastic again about rebuilding things. They declared some settlements in certain parts that they think it's safe. The whole region is not safe. The whole region lays on a fault line. Now we can build. I mean, science tells us that we can build buildings on fault lines. We have Japan, we have Chile, we have a small tiny town in that very region that didn't affect it because they did follow the regulations, because the inspectors did their jobs. They didn't take money. So we know it is doable. We have all the paperwork. It's just the following the steps to follow these things are just not in place. Not only that, people were protesting against haphazard removal of this waste and affecting their health, their kids, and all their livelihood are facing the police force. So it is a shame. It's a shame, it really is. But this is a town, again, from where I live. It happened. People were affected by police force. And many people, their lands are taken away from them because those lands, for some reason, declared safe to build more housing. I mean, well, lessons aren't taken, to say the least. One thing I would like to tell you about when I'm talking about Antakya. Well, Antakya wasn't the epicenter of the two major earthquakes, but it is the city that was hit the most and still struggles to this day with the aftermath of the earthquake. Part reason for this, regulations are not being followed. Construction companies are also the companies that build the inspection companies. So they're inspecting themselves. You know that how it goes. So of course they're gonna approve the buildings they build. And zoning. So in Turkey, zoning has been going on for a bit now, but there's been a major acceleration in that efforts in 2018. And it's ironic, but when the earthquake hit, the cabinet was going to have another zoning meeting that day. So that's mostly to blame why Antakya, Hatay in general, got hit hard by the earthquake. And these are the visible effects of the earthquake. We see the destruction, we see the health problems, we see people with amputations, we see people not having shelter and all that. But there are also the invisible effects, the mental health and the psychological effects that comes with such traumatic event. So according to a survey, at least survivors lost one member of their families, including me. I wasn't there, but I lost many members of my family. They burst into tears. Happens to me too. I wasn't there. Fits of rage and appetite changes in sleeping patterns. Actually, they don't sleep at all. They pass out. So they just stay awake, fearing anything could happen anytime, and they could not wake up. So they pass out and happy to wake up. They are living in state of fear and uncertainty. They just don't know what's going to happen next. Who's going to give them a safe and permanent housing? These people own their houses. They work all their lives to get that house or their work or their belongings. I mean, we shouldn't put a lot of meaning to material things, but these things reflects our efforts. These things reflects how much we worked. These things reflect how much we spent time to get it and how valuable, and the memories we share with these things. It's just not a piece of frame we lost. Someone gave that frame to us, maybe. That's what's gone. Memories are gone. And kids are especially traumatized. Access to school is hampered. Access to education is hampered. These kids are not going to school, many of them, because the school buildings are now being used as centers of coordination. So you can imagine the effect. So there are some efforts to bring the economy back, to attract some people to the region, not only to help physically, but economically as well. Municipalities have been great helping those regions affected by the earthquake. They helped build these small markets, and they gave it to the people, these shops to people. So we have clusters of sort of souks scattered around town. And this is the souk in Antakya after the earthquake. Some places are open. The ones that could open, they open, and some are not. So irrelevant items, but still there. There are some online trading going on as well to help people, you know, with economy and all that. But most of that souk is in rebels too. So yes, you see this part. If you go further down, you get to this intersection. So people put their lives in danger to make a livelihood, actually. Generally, so before the earthquake, the economy in Turkey was slowing down anyhow, and with the earthquake, it got worse, and the elections we had didn't make it easier. But with the inflation, people are having more difficult time to continue their lives. Again, there are no works in the regions that are affected, so people having hard time finding a job. People with disabilities, children and women are particularly affected, because women are, even working women are automatically found themselves in tents doing houseworks. I mean, these people had washing machines. How do you clean? Dishwashers. You don't have water. What do you clean? Yes, initially they had access to food, meals that are readily given to them, but those help organizations are pulling away or reducing help. And actually many of them have gone, I believe. So people are left to their means. And also, as I mentioned, with the increasing temperatures, insects and flies are abundant in the region. These are some dangerous carriers of disease. As far as I know, so far, there hasn't been an outbreak of a major disease, except in Syria. A cholera outbreak happened, which are expected in hard-hit regions. That happened also in Haiti back a decade ago, I believe. But so far, I didn't hear any such reports from Turkey. I couldn't see it in the available documents. But I think it's something is waiting to be happened, because among the places that's been destroyed are also hospitals, healthcare centers, doctors, healthcare workers died. People died. Officers, police officers died, teachers died, yet the government calling our teachers back to the region where they don't provide shelters, safe shelters to teach in September. There is no way any earthquake such hit area gonna recover. I mean, how do we get those kids to a building without their moms and dads? They are clinging to their moms and dads. So the future may look grim, The efforts are not organized. People are working hard. The locals are working hard. They're helping each other. Those who can open their jobs, they're hiring from earthquake affected areas, or people who are displaced went to other cities. They are being hired by companies in that particular under particular conditions. Being an earthquake survivor is a good enough reason to hire them, actually. So there are such efforts. There are good people in the region, but that's just not enough. It's not organized. It's not accessible to everyone. Yeah, that's all I have to say, except also I would like to thank everyone, all international rescue team members, miners, they were great helps, healthcare workers, legal aid workers, NGOs, local officials for their efforts and help. And remember, there were paperwork. Bureaucracy didn't cease. It did not stop. You still had to sign that declaring your house was destroyed in the earthquake. You still have to close accounts for the deceased ones. You still have to, I mean, banks were the first things that opened in a container of a prefabricated settlement. So, I would like to also thank you for paying attention to the situation going on in Antakya, in Turkey and Syria. Thank you.
Oh, no, hold on to that.